He lost his job while saving a 10-year-old girl hit by a bullet. The next day, he got a presidential invite. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. It was a day like any other, the kind you forget until something unforgettable happens. The kind of day when the sun shines without apology, casting long shadows across a street that's seen both joy and pain. South Chicago, in its usual rhythm. Laughter from kids playing tag on the sidewalk, the rattle of ice cream carts in the distance, a dog barking at nothing in particular. Life, in its ordinary chaos. Inside a corner grocery store nestled between two brick apartment buildings, Jamal Wright adjusted a row of canned tomatoes. The overhead fluorescent lights flickered as he worked silently, focused. No music, no distractions. This wasn't the life he dreamed of, but it was his steady, honest. Jamal was known around the neighborhood. Polite, quiet, always willing to help. He didn't make waves, didn't ask for much, just came in, did his job, and went home. But at exactly 3:46 p.m., that version of Jamal Wright, the quiet stock clerk, died forever. Pop, pop, pop. Gunshots. Then screams. Time didn't slow. It collapsed. At first, he didn't believe what he was hearing. Firecrackers. A car backfiring. But then came the screaming. Sharp, raw, unfiltered fear from the street. And just beneath it, the unmistakable sound of children. Running, calling out for their mothers. Jamal's body moved before his brain caught up. The box of canned goods hit the floor as he tore past the cashier, shoving the door open so hard it nearly bounced off its hinges. The sunlight hit him like a slap, blinding, harsh. Outside was chaos. People ducked behind cars, mothers clutched their children, and an old man shouted for someone to call the police. Jamal's eyes scanned the block, heart pounding in his ears. Then he saw her. A small form on the ground. A girl. 10, maybe 11. She lay sprawled on the sidewalk like a discarded doll, blood already darkening the fabric of her pale pink dress. Her arms trembled, fingers twitching. Her eyes were wide, but not crying. Shock had stolen her voice. Jamal didn't think. He ran. Every instinct told him to hit the ground, take cover. But instincts can be reprogrammed when something deeper takes control, something called humanity. He dropped to his knees beside her, hands shaking. Hey, I got you. I got you, okay? His voice cracked. The girl blinked, lips parting, but no sound came out. Blood. So much blood. Jamal didn't have training, but he had urgency. He yanked off his store shirt, pressing it against the wound near her ribs. She flinched. He whispered apologies, trying to keep her awake. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. Her body small and fragile beneath his trembling hands. More shots echoed in the distance. He didn't move. Someone yelled, "Get down," but Jamal stayed, bent over her like a shield. The world could explode around him if it wanted. He wasn't leaving this girl. He didn't even know her name. But none of that mattered. Minutes passed like hours. His knees ached against the concrete, sweat poured into his eyes, and the smell of gunpowder mixed with blood was suffocating. Still, he held the pressure. Kept whispering, "Stay with me, baby girl. Stay with me." Over and over, like a prayer. Sirens blared. Help was close. Right here, he shouted hoarsely, waving one arm. A paramedic darted toward them, followed by two more in uniform. They took over quickly, working with the precision of people trained for nightmares. One of them looked at Jamal's hands, slick and red, and said gently, "You can let go now." But he couldn't. Not right away. It was as if his hands had fused to her, unwilling to trust anyone else. One of the medics touched his shoulder. "She's going to make it, thanks to you." He finally let go. His arms dropped to his sides, limp. His chest rose and fell in uneven bursts. He hadn't realized he was holding his breath the whole time. He stood slowly, watching as they lifted the girl onto a stretcher, her eyes fluttering open for a brief second. Their eyes met. And then she was gone, loaded into the ambulance that vanished down the block, sirens fading into the distance. Jamal stood there, shirtless, covered in blood that wasn't his. The noise of the city returned in pieces, people murmuring, someone crying, a child asking what happened. Jamal couldn't answer. He barely heard them. He looked down at his ruined shirt on the pavement, the dark stain of her blood soaked into its fabric. His name tag, Jamal, in bold blue letters, hung off the edge. He picked it up slowly, folded it, and stuffed it into his back pocket. That's when someone tapped him on the shoulder. A woman, mid-30s, eyes glassy. You saved her life, she said softly, voice trembling. I saw it all. He nodded once, then walked back into the store, past the stunned cashier, down the same aisle where the cans still lay scattered. He sat on an overturned box and stared at the floor. The adrenaline drained from his body like sand through an hourglass. His heart still raced, but inside, something quieter had settled. Not peace, not pride, something heavier. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who just met the most important moment of his life and didn't flinch. He didn't know what would come next. But whatever it was, he knew this much. He'd do it all again, even if it cost him everything. Morning light crept in through the slats of the blinds, slicing across the worn-out carpet like prison bars. Jamal sat motionless at the edge of his bed, his blood-stained shirt from the day before bundled tightly in his hands. He hadn't slept. Not really. Just moments of drifting off and waking up with a jolt, seeing her face, her eyes. On the tiny TV in the corner, the local news played grainy cell phone footage. The unidentified man, seen here applying pressure to the victim's wound, is being hailed as a hero. There he was, kneeling over the little girl, face tense, arms bloodied. The video had been shared over 10,000 times already. Jamal didn't care about the numbers. He only wanted to know if she was alive. Then came the knock of reality. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He answered, expecting maybe a thank you or a follow-up from the hospital. It wasn't that. Mr. Wright, the voice said. We saw what happened yesterday. Jamal nodded slowly. Yes, sir. I'm sorry I left my shift, but that's exactly the issue. The voice cut in, clinical and detached. We have protocols. You abandoned your post during work hours. She was bleeding out, we understand. But unfortunately, we'll have to let you go. Silence. The kind that doesn't echo, it drowns. The call ended. Jamal stared at the screen, still holding the phone to his ear long after the line had gone dead. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but disbelief. He'd been fired. Fired for saving a child. He placed the phone down gently, like it might shatter if he moved too fast. Then he leaned back on the mattress, staring at the ceiling. No job, no backup plan. Rent was due in 5 days. His savings account could barely cover groceries. Outside, car horns honked, neighbors called to one another, life moved on. But inside that apartment, time had stopped. Later that afternoon, a neighbor knocked on his door. An older woman. She'd seen the footage. I knew it was you, she said softly. That little girl, they said she's stable now. The doctors say whoever kept her from bleeding out saved her life. Jamal nodded. A mix of relief and pain moved through him. At least she was okay. That was something. The woman placed a folded $10 bill in his palm. For lunch, she whispered. He didn't have the heart to say no. As night fell, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the window, watching the orange glow of the streetlights flicker on. Somewhere out there, a little girl was breathing because of him. And somewhere else, a store manager was clocking in a replacement for the man who refused to let a child die. The world had its own rules. But so did Jamal. And one of them was simple. You do what's right, even when no one claps. He didn't know it yet, but the world was watching, and this story was far from over. 2 days had passed since Jamal knelt in blood on that cracked pavement. But for him, it was as if time had stopped. The sirens, the screams, the warmth of a small hand slipping towards silence, none of it had left him. When he slept, he saw her eyes. When he woke, he still felt her pulse faintly beating under his palms. Until now, she had been nameless. Just a little girl in a pink dress. Her name is Zara, said the newscaster on the flickering TV in a barber shop. Jamal had stopped in for a trim, more for the distraction than the haircut. But the TV hanging over the mirror was unavoidable. Zara Almazy, 10 years old, is now stable at St. Mary's Hospital, the reporter said. Her parents are asking for help identifying the man who saved her. They call him the Southside Guardian. Jamal looked down at the floor. His reflection stared back at him in the mirror, quiet, steady, tired. The name didn't sit right. He didn't feel like a guardian. He just didn't want a child to die on his watch. The barber leaned closer. You kinda look like that guy, he said. Jamal gave a weak smile. Guess I've got one of those faces. He paid in cash and left before anyone could ask more questions. The streets weren't the same anymore. People noticed. They whispered. They pointed. A woman crossing the street with a toddler in her arms slowed down when she saw him. God bless you, she whispered. He nodded and kept walking. The corner store where he once stocked shelves stood quiet behind its glass door. Someone else was in his old position, arranging merchandise with indifference. Jamal didn't stop. He didn't need to see more. At the basketball courts, a group of teens passed around a phone, watching something together. One of them, broad-shouldered, hoodie pulled low, stepped forward as Jamal passed. "You him?" the kid asked. Jamal paused. "You the dude from the video?" "Yeah." The boy nodded. "Real talk, bro. Most people would have run. But you didn't." Jamal gave a slow shrug. "Didn't think. Just moved. That's why it matters." It hit different, hearing that from a kid who probably knew the sound of gunfire better than he knew peace. Jamal said nothing, just gave him a quiet nod and walked on. That night, sitting by the window of his apartment, Jamal listened to the city exhale. Police sirens in the distance. Someone arguing on the street below. Somewhere in a hospital bed, Zara was alive. Healing. Laughing. Maybe. Her parents were probably holding her close, whispering prayers in a language older than the buildings around them. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. This time he answered. "Mr. Wright," a woman's voice asked. "I'm with Channel 12. The family would like to thank you in person on camera. Would you join them tomorrow night?" "I'm not trying to be on TV," he said flatly. "I understand. But her parents want to look you in the eye. Just once." He didn't reply. The call ended. Then, a second call came. No caller ID. A man's calm voice spoke. "Mr. Wright, please stay home tomorrow morning. You're about to get a very important visitor." Click. Silence. Jamal stood motionless, the phone still in his hand. Outside, the wind carried echoes, gunfire, cheers, rumors. The streets had seen his silence. Now the world was about to hear his story. The morning sun crawled slowly through the grimy window of Jamal Wright's apartment. Dust drifted in the air, catching the light like tiny ghosts. He hadn't eaten. Couldn't. His stomach was too tight, twisted with uncertainty. That voice from the night before still rang in his mind. "Stay home tomorrow morning. You're about to get a very important visitor." He had replayed it a dozen times. The tone wasn't threatening. It was composed, almost respectful. But what did it mean? And why him? He had no answers. Only the ache in his legs and the shirt he ironed 3 times before giving up. It wasn't much, just a plain button-up, but it was clean, and that felt like enough for whatever was coming. He paced his apartment like a caged animal, pausing by the door every few minutes to listen. Silence. His clock ticked louder than usual. With each passing second, the tension coiled tighter in his chest. Then a knock. Not a casual tap. Firm. Purposeful. Jamal froze. He stepped forward, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door slowly. Standing there was a man in a dark, tailored suit. Clean cut. No smile. He held a polished black folder tucked under one arm, and in the other hand, an envelope. Thick. White. Embossed with gold. "Mr. Jamal Wright?" "Yes." The man extended the envelope. "I'm with the Office of Public Recognition. I've been sent on behalf of the President of the United States." Jamal blinked. What?" The man opened the folder. "You are being formally invited to the White House, Mr. Wright. The President has personally reviewed footage of your actions during the incident involving Miss Zara Almazy." Jamal's mind struggled to keep up. "You're serious? I don't carry this seal for jokes." Jamal accepted the envelope with both hands, fingers trembling. The paper felt unreal in his grip. Too heavy, too official. He glanced down. His name was printed in embossed ink. Beneath it, the words, "In recognition of exceptional civilian bravery." The man continued, "You'll be flown to Washington tonight. A vehicle will pick you up at 5. Lodging and attire have been arranged. If you need to bring someone, we can make accommodations." Jamal laughed under his breath. "I don't really have anyone." The man simply nodded. "Then this trip is for you." And just like that he turned, walking down the hall and disappearing down the stairwell like he'd never been there at all. Jamal closed the door slowly, clutching the envelope to his chest like it might vanish if he let go. He sat down on the edge of his bed and stared at it. The White House? He hadn't even been downtown in weeks. He thought back to Zara, her blood on his hands, her eyes staring up at him, scared and silent. He hadn't expected anything. No awards. No cameras. He only wanted her to live. But now, the country wanted to hear from the man who chose instinct over fear. A man without a badge or a title who still acted when it counted most. That evening, When the black car arrived and the driver opened the door with quiet formality, Jamal climbed in without a word. As the city faded behind him and the skyline gave way to clouds, he realized, sometimes it only takes one decision, one moment of courage, to change the course of a life. And his had just begun its second chapter. The air inside the East Room was still, thick with anticipation. Chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls above heads that whispered and waited. Cameras were poised. Reporters shifted in their seats. And standing at the center, under a beam of soft presidential light, was Jamal Wright. He wore a navy suit he didn't own, shoes that pinched, and a look of disbelief he couldn't shake. It had been less than a week since he was stocking shelves in South Chicago. Now, he was about to be introduced by the President of the United States. The President stepped to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "in times of chaos, there are those who act out of fear, and there are those who act out of instinct, guided by something deeper, compassion, courage, and a refusal to look the other way." He turned to Jamal, eyes warm, voice steady. Mr. Jamal Wright had no weapon, no badge, and no backup. All he had was the will to save a child's life, even at the risk of his own. The room broke into applause, long and thunderous. Jamal's heart pounded as the president reached for a small, black box. Inside it lay a medal, gold, engraved, elegant. The Medal of Civilian Valor. As it was placed around his neck, Jamal felt its weight, not just in metal, but in meaning. Then, as if guided by fate, a young girl walked out from the wings. Zara. Clean dress. Hair in soft curls. A faint scar on her side, barely visible now. Her parents followed close behind, eyes full of tears. She ran straight into Jamal's arms. He crouched to her level, caught in the hug like he'd been waiting for it since the day they met. This time, she whispered, "Thank you." It was the only thing he needed to hear. Later, as the event came to a close and the cameras dimmed, Jamal stood beside the president for one final photo. Officials, celebrities, and even military leaders asked for handshakes. He didn't know how to respond. He hadn't prepared for any of this. He only knew how to act when someone needed help. After the ceremony, reporters swarmed, asking what he planned to do next. "Go back to stocking shelves," one asked, half joking. Jamal smiled politely. "No, I think it's time to do more." And he meant it. Within weeks, he turned down multiple job offers, security firms, police departments, media appearances. Instead, he returned home and launched a small community initiative in Zara's name, the Right Way Foundation, dedicated to training youth in first aid, crisis response, and peer mentorship. Because he knew, if he hadn't been there that day, if he hadn't known to act, Zara might not be alive. And he also knew there were more Zaras out there, more moments waiting to be changed. Months later, in a quiet park not far from where it all happened, Jamal sat on a bench watching a group of kids learning CPR under a tent marked with the foundation's logo. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wasn't on camera. He was just Jamal again, only now, with purpose. And as a soft breeze moved through the trees, he looked up at the sky and whispered to no one in particular, "I didn't save her for recognition. I saved her because it was the right thing to do." That moment. The shot, the decision, the sacrifice had changed everything. And now, it was changing others too. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you're watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Jamal's courage? Were you moved by little Zara's recovery, or the powerful moment at the White House? Do you believe heroes like Jamal deserve more recognition? We'd love to hear from you. Mention your favorite part, and don't forget, real courage can come from the most unexpected places. Stay inspired, stay kind, and we'll see you in the next story.